So we are post show. We just had a talk back. It was a great show, by the way.
Was amazing. It was. I'm gonna bring you in as a ringer for all of it.
Welcome back to Radical Listening, the Portland podcast where we talk to local artists about their work. I'm your host, Phil Johnson.
And I'm your co-host, Clifton Holtz-Noggle.
So today we're actually going to be airing a backstage interview that is kind of a part two to the Found Dog Ribbon Dance. We talked to the playwright Dominic Finocchiaro, and we had a great conversation with him. And it's just been a piece of secret content that we're finally going to give you guys. It's a wonderful interview. If you saw the show and you want to know more about how he developed it and, you know, what was on his mind when he was creating it and things like that, this is definitely a really worthwhile interview to listen to.
Absolutely. I was in the show, and the things that he said about the show were not even some of the things I had not even considered, and I was like, wow, that it's amazing how many viewpoints there are when you're putting together a show like that, and then to hear like the original writer's viewpoint about things it just really cracked a lot open for me.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed talking to him. I think he's a very smart person, and I'm glad to finally be able to share this with you guys. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to check in with Philip Cuomo, who is the co-producer of Radical Listening and the artistic director of Coho Productions in Northwest, and he has a couple updates that he wants to share with you guys.
It's been a while since our last episode with the Pipeline folks, and it's been a while since I've even been in a theater.
Yeah, it's been probably maybe 2 or 3 months since I've been actually physically in a theater.
Yeah. What was the last thing you saw?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right?
I honestly
Pipeline?
think the last show I saw was Pipeline.
Yeah. Unless you count being in Found Dog Ribbon Dance. I think that was the last show I saw. Other than the pre-pandemic third grade performance of their musical Vanport, which was really wonderful. I'm teaching at an elementary school right now, and we had to pull together something because the third graders show was scheduled to go up like a week after they closed down for the pandemic. So we had to do a last minute, get everyone in the same room and see the piece of work that they made. And it was really, really beautiful. So
That's awesome.
That was probably actually the last piece of theater I saw before all this, because that was March 16th.
Yeah.
Or March 13th. March 13th. Friday the 13th was the last day that anything was normal for me. So,
Wow.
but
But we're finally back.
we are finally back. And I think this is a great time to continue the conversation about theater and performance because we can't go and see it right now. And there are so many people in our community who are actually making work right now. Artists have been spending a lot of their time in different ways, and people have been finding new outlets for their creativity. I know a lot of people who have been trying new things, a lot of people baking bread, and a lot of us artists are unemployed now and have a whole lot of time. So we got to do something so we don't turn completely inward.
That's true. So please keep listening. We're coming back to give you new content. We'll try and get as many new episodes for the summer as we possibly can, talking to all different types of people, maybe even some people who are non-theater makers. We will just see it's a matter of who we can find who is willing to jump on the show and talk to us.
And we'd love to hear from you if you have ideas of people you'd like to hear on the podcast. We finally launched our social media. So we have an Instagram at Radical Listening Podcast and a Twitter at RL Listening Cast, the letter R, Listening Cast. We'll be posting some behind-the-scenes photos, announcements about upcoming guests, tips on upcoming shows whenever that happens again. And, probably memes, right?
Definitely memes.
Definitely memes. So yeah, those would be great places to hear from you. We want to listen to you as you listen to us. We think of this as a two-way street, so that would be great. And let us know if you've been seeing anything good on the internet lately too, or people we should be looking out for in that respect.
Definitely, because I think it'd be great to use our social media to kind of repost and share work as well as interview guests. So we definitely want to be an avenue for people to share their work and promote their work. And
you can also reach out to us at our email address, which is radicallisteningpodcast@gmail.com, if you've got anything you want to let us know about.
True. Exactly. And in fact, I'd like to announce right here on our show that if you have a good headline, please send it to our email at radicallisteningpodcast@gmail.com. And all of the good ones we will share with our guests, and we will start, great discussions about the things you send us. If you'd like your name to be shared as well, you can attach that or some sort of alias, and we'll use that as well.
We all know that the deepest part of the show is headlines, so we need all of your very serious headlines.
All the true Radical Listening fans know about headlines.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, and so with some further housekeeping, we now bring in to our conversation Artistic Director of Coho Productions, Philip Cuomo. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Phil. Hi, Clifton.
Hey, how are you doing, Philip?
Okay. Things are a little crazy. Everything's on hold because of COVID-19, obviously, but things are starting to look up, and we're hopeful that we're going to get our 25th anniversary season announced pretty soon. We wanted to have announced it by now, of course, because it's May already, and we try to announce at the end of March, and we were so close to announcing just before everything went a little crazy. But we've been working with making some contingency plans so that we might be able to show and present our season, at least the beginning of our season, even if we're not allowed to open our theater to full capacity.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you guys know that the theater is tiny, right? It's 95 seats, but the stage is in and among those seats. And so we're concerned that with social distancing, that we're just not going to be able to open. And we're hopeful that there might be some sort of middle ground where we might be able to open to a small audience and have 20 to 30 people come to see a project and spread them out in the audience, that kind of thing. We did pick the first two plays in our season with an idea of having some flexibility in how we share the content to our patron base and Portland in general. The first piece is going to be a one-woman cabaret with one or two musicians. And so it's not a very large production group. And we are planning to, at least we're doing the research on getting some professional grade camera and audio equipment to turn the small intimate room we have into sort of a broadcast room and stream a live performance across social media in various platforms.
Oh, wow.
So
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the cost of it, right? Obviously, something like that is a little bit expensive, but we think it could be something that would be of benefit in the long term, even when things, quote, get back to normal, unquote. And we are back operating Coho the way we've operated Coho for the last 24 years, as a sort of a little hot box of intimate performance with people really close, shoulder to shoulder. But we could, at that time, if we are back up to the way we used to operate, we could stream one or two performances of every project to reach a broader audience, to share the content with more people, and also turn some of the recorded content into some kind of short films, or like in the golden age of television, you know, the way the old TV was done in the beginning. They were sort of like shooting live plays.
Yeah.
So Yeah, we're looking into stuff like that just so that we don't that Coho remains operational even if we can't open fully. So that's our biggest criteria now is or our biggest concern. My biggest concern is how to bring programming to people. How do we gather together in a different world?
Yeah, because theater is so much about that connection with people, and I've been learning that in trying to teach theater to kids and trying to come up with things that they can even do by themselves. You know what I mean? Theater is such a collaborative experience, and so figuring out a way that you can bring that aspect into it is also very important, I think.
Yeah, it seems like a great opportunity for theater to begin kind of an evolution into the technology world that we all live in.
Yeah, the thing that like Clifton is pointing to about the collaborative nature between artists is a key component of it. And, also the immediacy and spontaneity that exists between those who are watching and those who are performing.
Absolutely.
That's the piece that I'm most concerned about in regards to adding technology and recording stuff. And I'm super excited, Phil, about the experiment of what this bridge is going to be between the way theater was shared pre-pandemic and how theater is going to be shared as we go forward. And can we, in some way, create that sense of immediacy and proximity between those viewing at home or viewing on a computer or viewing somewhere else to the thing that is actually happening right in front of them.
Yeah.
Have a Zoom intermission lobby.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of content being uploaded to social media platforms. Some of it, some very, very high quality stuff. Like National Theatre of London are, live streaming for free their NT Live programming. And so there's a way that I'm not, and Coho's not trying to add to I want to be careful about adding to the glut of stuff that's out there and really target the projects that we are sharing, which is why this first show, this one woman, this cabaret that we're going to do, it's called From These Streets I Rise, and Mickey Jordan is the performer and creator of the piece, in which she's a social worker and she has worked with the houseless population, and she created a cabaret a year and a half ago called the People's Cabaret, in which she interviewed folks from the houseless community and then put their stories into this one performance. And she's going back now the next couple of months to chat with those folks she had worked with 2 years ago to see how they are responding to the pandemic and being homeless. And then, so that's the project that we're going to open our 25th season with. And that's a project that really is relevant content and is intended for a specific, to give a specific group of people a platform for their story to be told. So I'm not sure how we're going to deliver that content streaming to people who are homeless, however. That's part of our work over the next 6 to 8 weeks, is to generate enough context and contacts to organizations that are working with folk, and so maybe stream in small venues to in certain shelters and things like that around town. At least that's what we're talking about right now. It's a little blue sky because everything's up in the air.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on and updating us all on what's going on with the season and kind of getting us energized.
Yeah, I'm
great.
grateful for the opportunity. I really feel like I have not been quite as in touch with the Portland arts and cultural patronage as I'd like to be, and Coho audiences. And so to have another way to say hi to the Coho folk is really great, and I'm very appreciative.
Absolutely.
Talk soon. Right, talk to you. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.
So we're on stage after the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about the play itself and just kind of where you're working and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, my name is Dominic Finocchiaro. I'm a playwright. I went to school out here in Portland, but now I'm based out in Brooklyn, New York. And I've been working on this play, the Found Dog Ribbon Dance, for about 6 or so years. It had its first professional production 3 years ago out in LA, but this is the Northwest premiere, and I'm really excited to bring it back here, since it's a play very much about the Northwest, and to sort of bring it to Portland, where my family lives now and where I went to school, is a great honor.
Yeah, it's an awesome play. You talk about intimacy a lot, and it seems like you are focusing on like touch and companionship. And what sparked that? Like, how did the play start for you?
I mean, I think in general, I'm interested a lot in, I like to call it like the anatomy of loneliness, and kind of on a thematic level, stories about people desperately in search of connection and kind of disconnected from the world, and kind of reaching out for connection and maybe succeeding or maybe failing, but just kind of documenting the ways in which kind of lonely or isolated people search for a way to change that. And so I think that was a big part of it. Also, I mean, theater is such is a live medium, right? That's what makes it special and what makes it different than film or TV or these other also great mediums. The theater is about bodies in the space, in the room with you, having a experience in the moment, an ephemeral experience. And so I think for me, that idea of intimacy and of kind of physical touch and of bodies in space together, it felt like something that can only be done in a certain way in the theater, and give the audience that experience of the kind of viscerality of these people's searches for connection. Yeah, no.
No, I hear that. And there was a question that actually came up about duration during the post-show talkback. And I found it really interesting because it definitely felt like you were creating a situation for our audience and the actors on stage to all experience intimacy together for these prolonged moments. I thought that was very clear. Now, my question is, with the ribbon dance kind of juxtaposed to this, what was the seed for that? What did you want us to experience someone else's isolation, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I think the ribbon dances work on a number of different levels. On one hand, right, it's about this man's sense of joy and sense of private joy and kind of openness, right, that is juxtaposed with Norma's kind of more generosity, but also more kind of restricted vulnerability. So this is a man that is so fully kind of alive to joy, and dancing is such a joyous, right, expression of that. And so I think that was part of it. But also, I think there's something about, I like dancing on stage, and is similar to singing on stage, and I like experiences, events that actors can do that they can't fake, right? And so and I like the kind of watching, like the idea of a non-professional kind of, not purposefully bad, but purposefully unstudied person. I think there's a real aliveness to that and a real vulnerability. And so in the other play of mine that we did this year, Complex, there's these karaoke sequences that is, again, forcing an actor to make themselves vulnerable and uncomfortable, and then bringing them closer to the audience in that way. And so I think the ribbon dances for me function a little bit like that. And we want the actor that's playing Norm to commit to it and do it fully, but also we're very aware this is not about some Broadway swing performer that's doing, it's about watching someone try and flail and give their all in this room with us. So I think that's part of it.
Hey Dominic, how you doing? Good to see you. This is Clifton, your other co-host, sounding different because I'm a horse. I'm also playing dog in this show. So I had a few questions for Dominic, specifically about the dog, because I've been so much in that world for a little while now. The dog seems to be like a really, really strong metaphor for something, and I'm still like trying to figure out what that is, but I haven't been trying to put a whole bunch of emphasis on knowing what that is for me, for Norma. But it's been a question for me for a long time, and I know that people could really take what they want from the show, but I was wondering if you had some specific metaphor in mind with the character of the dog.
I mean, not incredibly specific, but I mean, I think, well, for one thing, I'm a huge dog fan, so I just I love dogs, and I think there should be more dogs in plays of one form or another. But I think it's that idea, right, of the intensely intimate and vulnerable relationships we have with pets, and dogs being kind of, in many ways, the epitome of that. But also this sense of pet ownership potentially being something that we can put a lot of emotion and feeling into in the same way that we would a relationship, right? But also we don't actually have to open up in the same way. And so I think, right, like a dog asks to be like loved and to be given attention, fed, taken out, right? But a dog is not gonna force you to be vulnerable and to talk, and so I think that idea of Norm being a character that in many ways is dog-alike, right? And that he has this childlike naivete, and he's very there's something a little, he's kind of like a big puppy dog. But that idea of, and maybe that's what attracts Norma to him, is that he seems simple, or he seems like it will not be a complex relationship, right? But the idea of, by the very nature of it being a human-to-human relationship, he asks things of her, and he forces her out of her comfort zone, and he needs things from her that a dog doesn't need, and that is eventually, hopefully, being, sustaining. But in the process of Norma's journey, being very terrifying. And so I think, again, that dog is the idea of that dichotomy, perhaps.
Sure. And it's like you can put the dog away, but you can't put the human away, because I felt that a lot. A big part of it for me was like not liking being put away and taken out of the room. And it was like, I realized how much of a big part that was, and I think that was what kind of spoken to me too, is like, okay, some of your problems you can put away, and others of them you have to work through with people.
And you can put onto a dog, like you can imagine what they're thinking, what they're communicating, right? And you see that in all the different characters with relationships with the dog, the different people that coming in and seeing it, right? You can really assume or project a lot onto an animal that you can't really do with a person, because the person will be like, no, you're wrong. You're like, no, that's not what I mean. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying, and so there is a safety there that is still obviously still incredibly enriching experience to have, but it's not as complicated an emotional experience. And so I think it's like the dog maybe is like the starter experience for Norma that maybe allows her, forces her into these other experiences, and also allows her maybe to take that next step into a experience of vulnerability with Norm.
Cool. And I just had one more question about the writing of dog, and being a person with a dog shirt on and saying bark. It was interesting because it came across to me at first almost like ironic, but then I realized dogs are not ironic creatures. You know what I mean? They're fully there. And so it took a whole new life when I really started to realize what being a dog was like. And so I'm just wondering where that came from, the idea to like have him just say bark,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about, again, this idea of the relative theatricality. Like, I think having a person on stage, like, in a dog costume or not in a dog costume, but fully, behaving like a dog, it's kind of fun, and like it's virtuosic to see, but like, it's kind of, it feels a little one-dimensional. So to me, I was interested in having someone that obviously that is a dog, and we get it, but that we're not like distracting you with all of this. Oh, see the person sucking his tongue out and doing all this stuff. It's not. It's about kind of actually just being like, we're in a theater, and this is all make believe, and this is not a movie where it's not realistic. We know that none of this, so we're just going to tell you this person's a dog, and you have the shirt in case you forget, and you're going to kind of agree to this kind of this contract, right? And I think hopefully there being a different kind of theatricality that comes out of that, and also comes out of that at the very beginning, being like, oh, this is the kind of play it's going to be. Like there's a dog, but it's not a real dog, and it's not a person in a dog suit. This is, we're about what's actually, what it actually means, to be a dog, or we're actually about what's really at stake for these people. And so I think in that way, and never forgetting, right, that we're watching a play. So like the tossing of the ball, right? The idea, like, it really wants to feel like two people tossing a ball. And so we really reminding the audience of that, like, slightly alienating effect, I think has a potential benefit for when we get into the real juicy emotionality, because it's a different experience for them. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thanks, because I worked on Complex too, as you know, and these two characters have been two of the most interesting characters I've gotten to play before. Playing the noise musician, got to do things on stage. I really appreciate that style of putting real things on stage. Got to play around with some stuff that I was interested in. And then this one, to get to do a whole show without having to say anything, is great not to learn lines, but also it was one of the hardest roles I've ever played, because I came in and I was like, whoa, okay, it's a dog, but it's a human, but it's a dog. Where's the line? And what's this like? And so it was a completely new experience of approaching a play. So I appreciate that.
Well, and you just did such a great job. And I think you really got to the heart of it, right? And that, like, animals are always present, right? And we hope that when we're doing theater, right, that everyone on stage is always present. But an animal, when you don't have to fall back on those lines or on the the psychology, right? And so your job is just to be there, and to not try to steal focus, but also just to be. And I think you did a really good job of both making strong choices and getting the audience on your side, but also just being really honest and in the moment in a way that felt very zen and very very awesome. So it was a joy to watch.
Thanks so much for bringing your work to Portland.
Thank you.
As always, you can find the full catalog of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and SoundCloud.
If you have questions or would like to reach out, feel free to reach out to our email, which is radicallisteningpodcast@gmail.com, or visit the Coho Theater website for more information. And thanks for listening.